All right, what we're going to talk about here is the funnel diagram, we call it. It's really a ministry flow diagram, and it relates to the Great Commission. In other words, one of the problems that Jesus said was in Matthew 9, he said, "Pray the Lord of the harvest that we may be able to send out many workers to the harvest," because it's already white, it's ready to be harvested, but it's like there's nobody to harvest it. I mean, what a crazy thing, right? So we need harvesters, in a sense, or developers, or Christian leaders, or people who are able to reach the next generation. Just like 2 Timothy 2:2, Paul told Timothy that things you've heard from me, pass them on to faithful men. He'll be able to pass them on to others who can pass them on to others. And this is what we desperately need in Christianity, is to be able to spiritually multiply. So this is a diagram that explains a lot of this. If you went to a foreign country where there was not one Christian, not one, what would you do first? What would you do second? What would you do third? Do you have any idea what you do? How would you get to strong Christian from zero? Working with someone. That's what this diagram explains. So on your college campus, basically you can trace everything back to this diagram. And so here's how it works. The real wide part of the funnel up here represents the flow of people. And at the very top, we want to put the word prayer. Prayer. In other words, in Colossians 4, doesn't that what it tells us to do? It says that we need to be determined to pray and ask God to work and to draw people. So God has to draw people. As we go out, the first thing we're going to do after praying is meet people. Doesn't matter what country in the world, what language, doesn't make any difference. We just need to meet people because these are the objects of God's love. This is why He came to die on planet Earth. So when you meet people, the next thing that you need to get to is where you can share the gospel, all right? Or preach the gospel, or make the gospel clear so that they understand it. And of course you have like little booklets like the 4 Spiritual Laws, Knowing God Personally booklet, or the Bible itself, you can do that. And out of this is going to come some responses. There is the non-Christian response, let's say, which is, I'm not interested. Okay, so with that one, you just kind of forget it. Not interested. Don't worry about it. Here's another one. Already a Christian. You just happen to bump into somebody who already has Christ in their life. They just need to grow. You might meet someone else who would pray. I'll put pray to receive Christ, okay, or RC. They would receive Christ with you or shortly on their own. 2 days later, a week later, they pray and invite Christ in their life. Then there's also this other one I just call green fruit. They're not against it, and knowing Christ. They're just not ready yet. So not ready yet. They just need time to be ready. And so you can meet with people like that, invite them to retreats, do all kinds of fun things with them. But every so often come back and say, have you thought any more about what it means to know Christ in a personal way? Do you think that's something you're still searching for, or you would like to have in your life? One guy, I remember, was like this, and it took him an entire 2 years being around. He came to our meetings all the time. He was a part of all the fun. You would think he was a Christian, but he and I both knew that he had not made that decision. And one day, he was ready to make that decision. Well, anyways, you take all the people in these 3 categories here, and you start down the funnel diagram, which is the discipleship. So this is discipleship. We call them appointments or times. Discipleship number 1. Okay, and that starts out with the funnel diagram, or the committee truth diagram. And if you want to see all the verses and stuff, go to the Discipleship 1 packet. But anyways, you go to Discipleship 1, 2, 3, I think there's 5. A lot of times it takes us at least half a semester, sometimes a full semester, to go through everything at the pace that the new disciple can take it. So while this is going on, the other thing we'd like to do is start a small group. And for the newer Christians, we start a Jesus Bible study or discussion group. We call it a discussion group. And it goes for 4 to 6 weeks. And it's all about who Jesus is. And remember, Jesus is the foundation for their life. So they really need to know about Jesus. If I meet older Christians, I just tell them, why don't you go to a Jesus Bible study? There's a lot of times we assume that Christians have it all down about Jesus. And we find out many times they don't have it down hardly at all. They just never got into it very much. So after 4 to 6 weeks, let's say here's a person, here's another person. We will start another group, and we call this a growth group. And that's the whole purpose. The whole topic here is going to be on how to grow in your relationship with Christ for the next 12 weeks, so to speak, like a whole semester. And what you do is you find out who was really interested in the first one. Let's suppose this guy here was interested. We're going to invite him to this one. This guy was interested. Oh, there he is. This guy, he's not interested, so we don't invite him. This guy somehow dropped out of school, so we don't invite him. This guy, yeah, he's sort of interested. Well, we can invite him too. So now guess what? We have 3 people that went from this group to that group. And so you got another 12 weeks of meeting with them at the same time you're doing these discipleship appointments with them. And at this point, we're working on our discipleship packet number 2 and number 3, which will incorporate maybe 15 or 20 appointments like this, kind of in sequence, kind of basic, not too heavy, not too detailed, but enough to help somebody really grow. Eventually, as time goes on, we want to get to this group down here at the bottom. We call it an action group. And we make sure it has no more than 3 people. And this might have gone on for 1 or 2 semesters. Maybe at the end of this growth group, different people grow at different rates. Let's say this guy was really growing great. Well, what this leader does then begins to expose this person. I'll put this is where a lot of this happens. Expose to ministry activity. In other words, this leader could take this person and take them right back up to the top of the funnel diagram, say, let's go meet some of your friends, or let's go meet some people on campus or in town, and let's see if we can meet them first, and then pray and see if we can share Christ with them. And we begin to take the second person through the funnel diagram, only this time he's in a position to begin to disciple the next generation. Okay? That's why it's so critical that this leader helps the young Christian not only to get the content of growth, but to actually catch it. And you catch it in the action. There's action, there's things you're trusting God for, and they're watching you trust God, and that's the action. And if you teach a person discipleship material without any action, without any application, they will walk away and say something like, I was never discipled. There's so many Christians who thought they were going to get discipled by going to a discipleship course, but yet they never applied it. And they have to apply it in the context of outreach, not in the context of going to church or another nice, warm, fuzzy fellowship group. It has to be out in the action where they have to take risks, they have to trust God, and what the leader's doing is simply going with them and helping them watch the leader do it. And after a while, they're able to catch it. And then they're getting started and getting on their own there a little bit. So if you need 2 growth groups, transition groups to get to the action group, then take 2 groups. So this might go for 12 weeks. You might have a number 2 group that goes for another 12 weeks. But eventually, the people getting discipled here are able to do this, start their group. Different groups they're starting. So now, in a sense, they are leading groups that they were once a part of. And guess what? They're doing the same thing. Here's a Jesus group. Here's can be a growth group, or it could be another action group. The action group, how it's defined, is that everybody in the group has their own personal ministry or their own people they're discipling or working with. And it's the same thing. Eventually, in time, this is what's going to take place. You're getting spiritual multiplication, not only of the development of the person, but the development of groups and the development of new people out here. Now, this is creating trained manpower with rails to run on to do the Great Commission for the next 50 years of their life. This is what we want to do on the college campuses. It's what we want to do in cities. This is really the main thing. Now, over here, I want to write tools. Okay, big tools. We need some tools that can help the main thing, the main process here happen. So what might be some of those tools? Well, how about a retreat? How about going to church? How about books? Or maybe tapes? Here's a big conference, a Christmas conference. And what the tools are doing, they are helping the process. You see how that all helps it. So you have all these different things happening sort of at once, and all in process, and you just need to keep it straight. There's another thing that I think really helps this, and we call it cross-training. Cross-training is a series of classes that we put together that help at every single level here to get better training, better ability to actually do this. It's really a valuable piece of training. Now there's one last thing with this whole diagram here, and I got to do it kind of like this. I don't know if you can see this. It has this big thing I'm doing here around all of this represents an atmosphere of warm, loving relationships. This is not just academic. This is learning to love people, helping people to love each other, and to love, most of all, to love Christ, love God with all their heart as they're doing all of this. So that out of it is coming great fruit that glorifies God. In a sense, if we put it in our purpose statement, all these people here, all the way through, are being released, or let's say, unleashed. Okay, there you go. They're unleashed with Christ on the throne to take the Great Commission to the next level, or to the next generation. I hope that all makes sense. If this doesn't make sense and you don't understand this, how this works, please talk to one of the master plan staff, and maybe they can help you get it down. But this is what it is. And if you can imagine doing this for 2 to 5 years on a college campus or in a local church or in a city somewhere, how many people will eventually be here at the action group level and be able to begin multiplying and reaching out a whole lot more. So multiplication, spiritual multiplication like this, involves all these factors, and it starts very slow, but as it goes, it increases momentum. And we've determined that basically if you had one person, he discipled one other person like this in 1 year's time, and then you had 2, and you went from generation to generation, doubling every generation, it would take around 37 years to reach 9 billion people, or 7 billion people in the world. So it's possible to do. So that is the funnel diagram.